Okay, so after much searching for an image, it's very difficult to light myself for this, so I kind of went on the internet and found an image with a high resolution image. Okay, so I'm just about ready to begin. I had a bit of trouble finding just a kind of the right image to work with for this because I wanted to do something sort of additively and reductively together. The image I ended up with was an image off the internet of Sting, a musician that some of you may know, some of you may not. The reason I chose this, it's got really good lights, darks, and sort of halftones in between, but really dramatic range of values in it. And also I get up really close, I can kind of see the edges of the eye and the shape of the eye. And you can see that ball shape underneath there, sort of that spherical shape. And so it's a good subject to work with. Okay. The one thing about this that I would point out is that it's lit from two different directions. And if you remember how you were lighting the sphere, you can kind of see that when you look over at this eye here. Basically, you have a light coming from this side hitting the ball on this side and the cheekbone here. So you have a directional light coming this way. When you go over to this eye, what you have is a light coming from the underside underneath, and you can tell because it's hitting the underside of the ball there, but the edge of the lid is casting a shadow up onto the white of the eye, so you can kind of tell the direction of that. And that's why when you back up, you have the dark area down the center of the nose and the forehead, and the nose is lit on both sides. Normally, it's kind of you're going to see the shadow cast on one side or the other. So this is sort of evenly lit, but it lets us see all of the shapes really nice and clearly. The reason I'm working from a photograph is that with the lighting on to draw, I really don't have any good lighting on my face, so otherwise I would work from the mirror. And I would really recommend that you guys work from the mirror and work from life if possible, because it's really, you're going to see more. It's just going to give you, it's going to develop you a lot more in terms of your understanding of drawing and understanding the space that you're drawing. So because this image is dark down the center and light on the sides, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of a patch of this sort of general shape of this shadow, and that will give me a center to work from, and I'll just blend that out. So it'll be a reductive drawing, but it won't just be one gray all across. I'll have a little darker gray in the center. I'm not going to go wild. This will help me orient where the forehead is, and I can use it to find the brow bone. And center of the page, I know that there's a shadow that goes down the center of the nose. I'm not going to be very definite with it in the beginning. I'm really concentrating on the eyes and the brow bone area for this drawing. Okay, all right, a little bit of cast shadow in the corners of the eyes. I'm just going to put a little bit down there right now, just like that. Okay, and then I'm going to blend that out. Go back in here with the chamois and just kind of soften it. So I'm really just trying to get a little bit of a darker value in the middle, most of it coming right back off again. And that blends out into the space around it a little bit. The areas where I'm planning on putting the eyes, I can go in there and just get a little bit of a shadow. And you can see how that just sort of starts to help you find where to develop the form. Okay. Now again, like with reductive drawing, what you do is you start off by going in and removing using your kneaded eraser first. So you kind of go in and you go in there and you try to start working with the highlights. If you look on this face here on either side, it's very, very bright. So I'm going to go in there and just start lifting off some of the charcoal. The reason you lift it off is, again, if you use your other eraser, you will grind it into the paper and it just won't come off after. And this is an area where I need it to get fairly bright, so I want to kind of lift, and then eventually after that I'll go in with my regular eraser and work it. And you can use it to even blend a little bit, but you don't want to smudge it into the page. Everything is going to be very soft focus at first. You're not going to really see strong forms right away. And work your way through the light areas. Going to go into the light on the other side of the face here. Now with your kneaded eraser, what happens? It's like your regular eraser. When it's kind of like clean like this, it's going to lift up material really nicely. Once it gets saturated with the black, it won't do that. So you have to continually keep opening it up, getting a nice surface, and that will lift it off really well. And I can see the light going all around the side of the head. Okay, I'm going to do this for a little while and I won't talk, so I'll speed that up when we get to the video. So you see, initially you're really not getting in there and putting a whole bunch of charcoal on there and drawing a bunch of lines before you know where you need to have lines. So the less you move things around, the more fresh your drawing is going to look. You know, you can rework and get things just right over time, but there's a certain feel to, you know, the labor that's involved in that. It shows in that the piece feels overworked or somehow unnatural due to that. So take your time and just really look at the light you're seeing. Just start off with those little patches. Those will lead you into the lines. And the thing about what I'm doing right now is that this drawing can change. If I don't like this, then it's all wrong. It's really just a matter of smudging it out with my charcoal or my chamois and starting again. So it's a really forgiving process unless you lay down big, heavy, hard lines. If you do that initially, then you're kind of stuck. They're going to stay there and there's little you can do to change that. So you're not going to be able to get your paper bright again. You're going to have these lines that you'll have to hide and mask somehow, maybe by, you know, working really heavily over top of them with another dark or something like that. And so it's not worth it, and it's not really a logical way to build your drawing either. You can see on the bottom of the lid, and I don't know for sure that the lid's exactly here just yet. But again, it gets me a loose reference point It helps me get to a place where I can measure and make some exact measurements and decisions. And even once I get a little bit further than this, I won't start laying down lines. Then I'll work in with my white eraser, and that's when I'll start maybe getting a few lines reductively, and I'll nudge my way closer and closer to laying down a few definite lines. The thing with charcoal too is a lot of times it takes time that you don't think it should take. And so as you put material on and then brush it off and it disappears, you feel like you're losing the drawing, but it is the stages that it goes through to eventually darken down and all the edges to harden up and the drawing to be just right. It doesn't happen in one layer, and we want it to for the most part, but realistically it's going to take a lot more effort and time than that. When you use your eraser even, you start to affect the tooth of the paper, the fiber of the paper, and you start to alter that. So the less you can do that, at least initially, the more, again, the more delicate, I guess, you can make the drawing. And see, I just took a whole bunch off right there because I'm talking. I want those darks in there, but I think I'm going to put some dark in now. What I'm doing here. See, I'm going to kind of go back into that shadow and try to just deepen it just a little bit. Get this area in the nose formed a little bit. Sure. Get this area in the nose formed a little bit. Got a bit of a line there. But that's so soft it'll go away if I want it to. Also, in terms of getting your darks, it can be a little unnerving when you lay down your dark, because if you don't, if you're not going to blend it out, then you definitely need to be very, very careful about it. But normally you're going to do some level of blending, and it'll soften as soon as you start to blend it. I'll talk a little bit about the shapes that you have. So we're just dealing with this area here, but when you look at this area here, you have two areas that protrude on either side. Related to this area in the skull. Okay, right there. It flattens out across here, so you have a shadow across here. Okay, and then you have the brow bone coming across here. So I'm dealing with this area in here right now. Basically what we're looking at is raised area here. It flattens slightly across as it goes across the front of the brow bone, and then tapers again around the other side. So what I'm looking at doing is bringing the shadows out in this area here and sinking the corners of the eye socket in. You can see the light on both sides. What happens is it comes forward, it flattens out, and then rolls back in behind. If we look at the skull, we see a similar thing going on. We can kind of see that in this area, the skull here, and from the side it flattens out as it goes across there. So that's where the shadow softens a little bit in the center there. I chose this one too because underneath the eye, the ball of the eye, there's the tear gland in here, and it's kind of lays over top of the sphere of the eye, and stings are very predominant. You can see them very well. And so I'm going to work in with the shadow that defines that, and that connects into the orbit of the eye and creates the socket for the eye. And so that comes from the main fleshy part across here and connects in with this line and creates the orbit of the eye. And that's what I'm going to pull out in the next few minutes. I'll try. It's almost all exaggerated so you can see that. It's a little softer on the other side, but it's still there. Seeing it on one side, I know where to look for it on the other side. And again, the shadows are a little different because of the change in lighting from one side to the other. But the eye socket is still in the same place. There's a line of the eye. I'm not going to make it a hard line yet because I want to have a really close look at that later. And so I'm looking at this line here, and then I'll look at this line here, but I'll do a sort of a first run at it where I indicate it and get the shadow in there, and then I'll get that line more exact when I come back, after I blend all the shadows out and start defining things a little more exactly. And that's what you don't want to do. You don't want to get in there and try to make it exact right away, because you're going to throw all the compositional balance off. It'll get lopsided. You mess it up. Make the skull around it, make the orbit of the eye around it first, and then you can start getting in there and getting those precise details that we want to get to. Now, one of the things I'm doing is just giving myself some material to work with on the surface. You'll be surprised. When I blend it out, a lot of it will disappear. And I'll be surprised too, every time. But that's okay. That starts building up that value structure underneath. And when I go to put in my really nice darks, that's when I'm going to be able to kind of achieve them, because I've got some of this laid down and the fiber starts to fill up, and that's when everything starts to fall into place. So there's a kind of a slow build up to a lot of that. One of the things we don't see in this drawing very well is a shadow that's normally in the bridge of the nose, and that's because it's lit like that on either side and reflects light across there. So that disappears and moves that shadow down here. So we're seeing that right underneath the line of the eye. So that's a good, helps us with the location where that shadow starts in relation to that. But it's not what we would normally see, which is regular lighting. And I'm going to say it's so not fun to draw over top of a camera with a camera between you and your drawing. Not my favorite thing to do. Now all those contour lines you've been working with start to make sense, because as you blend the material, you can start including the feel of the contours of the surface. Again, remember, we're just laying it out for any actual real lines. See, on this side it shifts to the other side of the bone. Put my greasy fingers in there. This is very good. It takes a lot off, but it helps you build it up gradually with a really nice surface. So it's not quick, but what happens is when you use your fingers, it really pushes it in, and the grease in your fingers kind of locks it in and can create real uneven spots on the surface and some pretty nasty stuff at times too. And when you're ready to go in, I think, really get something exact, and that's different. But, at this stage, we're not ready to do that, so we should continue to be more gradual in the build-up. Now they can still be moved. Again, I'm trying to get a good look at them. It's really hard from behind here. Oops.